My maid of honor conned me and a family member with dementia on my wedding day 2 years ago today, so let's talk about it. I know I've shared about this before, so I'm just going to give a brief overview if you are new here, but I mostly want to talk about the new developments that have happened this year and some of the fallout of that, and also how I feel about this event being tied to my anniversary and the new year and her being in my wedding photos for the rest of forever. Maid of honor, who I'm going to call Crystal, was my best friend of 17 years. It's a long time. You would think you would know someone after that. Since we've been friends forever, she was there for the Ted situation. So she was the maid of honor in my first wedding to the guy that thought that he was never gonna die that I met in a cult, okay? She was there for all of that craziness. And I will give her her props because I did call her after the second big assault, and she is one of the reasons that I did leave. She told me that I needed to come home and take some space. One thing that isn't great though, and y'all are gonna hate this, she told me that I needed to give him closure. So I had created a safety plan with the domestic violence hotline, and basically she told me that I owed him closure and it would not be right for me to just divorce him because he deserved a sit-down conversation for the end of our marriage despite the fact that he had strangled me. So already not great judgment, but she was 7 years older than me. So in my mind, she kind of knew what was best a lot of the time. I had put her up on this pedestal, and also just because of her profession, I felt like she knew a lot more than me. So there kind of was that at play. So Crystal loves big. So honestly, it kind of reminds me of Ted. Ted used to love bomb me and be really big, grand gesturing. She is also that way. So Crystal was always throwing the biggest party. She was the life of the party. But what was interesting is a lot of my friends who met her later, they did not like her. They said that she came across kind of fake. She did have a few interesting quirks. Like, one thing is she would tell me, well, I would try out for American Idol, but I know I would win and I don't want to be famous, you know? And she kind of just thought that she was all that. But when you've known somebody, you have to put yourself in my shoes. When you've known somebody for so long, you just kind of chalk it up to that's their quirk, that's their personality. Like, oh, it's so funny, she's so confident. But she would say things like, any guy would cheat on their wife for me. Like, any guy would leave their wife for me, so I have to be careful around men because I'm like so tempting. And she was pretty, but that is a crazy thing to say. Brandon and I got engaged. One of the first things that they said is that they wanted to help with the wedding alcohol because he had been a bartender in the past. So he was like, let this be my wedding gift to you. I will be the bartender for your wedding, okay? And I was like, wow, that's so incredible. Thank you so much, because we were getting married in a backyard. So picture this, okay? We're getting married at a family member's backyard, and we had a clear tent, and it was really beautiful, but it was also a backyard wedding. So we are all pitching in. Like, I had another family member who made all of the food, and that was his wedding gift to us, is he said that he wanted to cater our wedding, so he made us lasagna, you know? So everybody's like kind of pitching in, and that's the vibe, and that's kind of just the vibe of my family. Like, that's always how we have really done things. We just help each other out. So they had said that they wanted to handle the alcohol. The only thing is that I would purchase all of the alcohol, obviously, and then they would serve it. So I bought a lot of alcohol, and I had asked her husband, how much should I buy? And he told me the exact amounts of like the liquor. We weren't gonna have too many drinks. We were only going to have like tequila, that way he could make margaritas, and we were gonna have red wine, white wine, and beer. And that was pretty much the vibe. It wasn't going to be crazy because it was a backyard wedding on a budget. So I had gotten all of this stuff, and I had gotten some bottles of wine at my bridal shower. My mother-in-law did a thing where everybody brought a bottle of wine, so we had some of that. And I had bought, in my mind, more than enough alcohol based on what her husband had said to get. So the wedding was perfect, and we are at the reception, and my maid of honor, Crystal, comes up to me and she says, hey, Juby, we are out of alcohol. Like, we are running out, we have no more left. And I was shocked that we didn't have alcohol left, okay, because I had gotten a lot of alcohol, and a lot of my family does not drink, and we had a lot of older people in attendance. So I think at our wedding, we had about 80 people at the wedding, and I would say about half of those people were drinking. And then maybe 20 of those people were only having a glass or two, and I'd say maybe 15 people are getting really crunk, okay? So it wasn't insane or anything like that. I was surprised that we were going through it. So she said, I'm going to send my husband out to go get more alcohol, and you can just pay him back later. And in my mind, I'm like, thank you, perfect. Like, that was totally fine with me. I was fine for reimbursing him for the alcohol because he was gonna go get it, and you know, problem solved. He comes back with more alcohol and we are all good to go. We have a great night. It was the perfect wedding. So the next day I get on the flight. We ended up going to Disney for our honeymoon. So we are on the way to Disney and I get a text message from Crystal saying, hey, you owe him $357. And I was surprised that it was that much because I really thought I had bought enough alcohol. And she didn't mention about having any alcohol left over or anything. She just said, this is how much you owe him. And I don't know, I was kind of like, that's strange that she's texting me literally like on the way to the honeymoon, and that's a lot of money, but it's fine, whatever. I'm glad that he saved the day. So I was like, of course, here you go. And I Venmo'd it to him and I said, you know, thank you so much. You did such a great job. And that was that, until I found some insane evidence. So some backstory, I had a family member who had dementia and I was in charge of going over their bills, okay? And I was just told to look over it and make sure that the balance wasn't getting too high, but I was in charge of paying their mortgage, their energy bill, and just kind of running that part of their lives for them because they were not able to do it themselves. So I get back from the honeymoon. I am looking through this statement and I was like, wow, this is kind of high. I wonder why it's so high. So I am going down the statement to see what's on here and I see the alcohol charge for $357, which is exactly the amount that I sent Crystal's husband. So why would I be paying Crystal's husband if my family member who has dementia paid for the money? And this is getting so long. I'm so sorry. Follow for part 2. My maid of honor conned me and a family member with dementia on my wedding day, and here's where we left off. On my honeymoon, my maid of honor had told me that I needed to reimburse her husband for the wedding alcohol that he had purchased at the reception because we ran out. So I had already reimbursed him, and then when I got back from my honeymoon, I am going through the statement and I see that my family member who has dementia actually paid for this alcohol. I was in charge of going through all of their statements and bills, and as I'm going through, I see the charge on there and it is for the exact amount that I paid Crystal's husband. So why would I be paying Crystal's husband for the wedding alcohol if my family member with dementia paid for it? And do they even know that they paid for it? Because that is why I am going through their statements. So at this point, I'm spinning. I have no idea what is going on. So I decide that I'm going to start looking even closer at my family members' accounts. So as I'm going through, I see that my family member who has dementia wrote a check to Crystal's husband for $500. And in the little memo line, it says wedding alcohol. Not only did they profit off of my reimbursement because they never paid for it, they also got a $500 check for wedding alcohol. And there was talks amongst this group, guys, that we were not to be accepting large sums of money from this family member unless it was all kind of agreed upon, because people had taken advantage of this family member in the past. And that is why I was looking over their statements in the first place, was because something I had heard had happened years before. And yeah, we're gonna get into that. So as I keep looking, I noticed another thing that didn't quite add up. Was my maid of honor had made it to where we were going to go to Howl at the Moon. It's this really nice piano bar for my bachelorette. And she had told all of the bridesmaids that we needed to pay her because she had reserved the Howl at the Moon reservation. So we all paid her like $50. I didn't pay because I was the bride and she said you shouldn't have to pay, but all of the other bridesmaids had Venmo'd her this money because she said that she had paid for the reservation. It was on my family member's account who had dementia. So she also was getting reimbursed for the bachelorette, despite the fact that she never paid for that either. I start digging and I found a lot more, which I am legally not allowed to talk about right now. And just know that this is the tip of the iceberg. There was shenanigans going on for years upon years. And I heard rumblings of some miscommunication with money that Crystal had told me maybe 5 or 6 years previously. She had said like, oh, some people thought I did something. But as my best friend, I just believed her, and she told me it was a miscommunication. it was not a miscommunication because I now have all of those bank statements and I was able to go back and see what happened. Double payments, just lots of craziness that I am not legally allowed to really get into right now, but just know that we are tip of the iceberg. Now, if you know about charming people, they have their flying monkeys. They have their people who believe that they could never do any wrong and they don't want to know the truth. So I have offered to sit down with her flying monkeys and to show them proof, like cold hard facts, and they have declined. They do not want to see it and they don't want to know. And on top of that, they wanted me to not be in charge of this family member's finances anymore because it was causing trouble. So that led to the inevitable fallout of a lot of relationships in the last year and a half. When I confronted Crystal, she did not have any explanation for any of it. She just really went on the attack and started attacking me as a person, but not answering any of the questions or cold hard fact things that I was asking her to explain. I even said, if you're saying that he paid for this, then show me your bank account. Show me your bank account where he paid for the $357. And she never did and can't because he never paid for it. So there is a lot of that going on. And I ended up going into therapy this last year. So this is kind of my update. I went into therapy this last year and I've just really been unpacking this friendship, and I ended up writing her, I think it was like a 10-page letter where I tried to come to her as a Christian and said, listen, we have been best friends for 17 years. If you messed up, tell me and apologize, take responsibility, and I will try my best to forgive you and move on. But I can't move on until you take responsibility for what you did. You can't keep gaslighting me. But I said it very nicely. I was really trying to come to her saying, I don't want to throw away this 17-year friendship. You mean so much to me. And she still denied it. In fact, she was like, well, it's not my fault that that family member loved me more than everybody else. Okay. Anyway, it was crazy. It was gaslight. So that was very hard, and I ended up cutting off that friendship. And then there are some other things here. Hold on. There's been a lot going on this past year that I have not been allowed to talk about, and I probably will never be allowed to talk about because I am not the only victim involved. But there has just been a lot of abuse and dark things going on that I never knew. So just imagine feeling like you've known people for 20 years and thinking that you know who your friends are, and you find out that you've been lied to for years upon years, and there are just massive secrets being uncovered. It felt like I was finding out a new secret every few weeks, and it has been so much to unpack in therapy. And the first half of the year, I was like, this is the worst year of my life. I lost so many friends that I never thought I was gonna lose. After everything I went through with Ted, I felt confident that the people who saw me through that were going to be in my life forever. And that has just not been the case, So I ended up in therapy, I reached out to everybody involved and asked, if y'all are willing to take responsibility and be honest, and even apologize, because they were not apologetic. And I know that's so vague, but they wouldn't even do that. So through therapy, I decided to cut off these friendships. And here, I know this is rambly, but I posted about the Maid of Honor situation for the first time in July, and you guys were just such a great support for me. You made me feel not crazy, and I felt so secure in all of the decisions that I had made through just talking about it with friends, through the internet, through therapy, all of it. And the last 6 months of my life have been some of the best I've ever had. I feel like I was at the absolute low, and now I am just at a very big high. And it's not just about this situation. It's also, we got to move into this apartment, and I've made new friendships in adulthood, which is hard to do. It is hard to find new friends as you get older. And this year has just been so good, surprisingly, and I have found myself not really missing those relationships. Sure, I'll have moments where I feel little moments of grief where I'm like, that's sad that we're never going to have those game nights again. But I feel so sure of my decisions, and I feel like I can breathe, and like the heaviness isn't there anymore. So all of that happened 2 years ago today, and it has just been a crazy, wild ride. And it is sad that she is in so many of our wedding photos. And she was just such a large part of my life, and so many of our wedding photos have her and her husband in them, and it is a bummer. But it is what it is, I guess, and I'm just trying to be thankful for what I do have, which is a healthy support system, probably for the first time in my life, where there are no secrets, and I just feel very good with the community that I am a part of now. And yes, so that is what I am thinking today. Sorry, I rambled for 10 million minutes, and let me know if you guys have any questions. I will try to answer them in the comments.